What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of SEC Talk with your hosts Holden and Cody. Hope everybody's doing good today. We are finally live with you guys, at least on our page and channel and podcast. If you guys are listening, Cody, hope you're doing good this evening. I know we've got about 100 cancellations in the season as far as this week goes in the SEC, and a little bit of other news. Without further ado, dude, let's just jump right into it. I mean, there's no sense in wasting time. Unfortunately, we don't have nearly as many games as we thought we would have this week, because it was going to be a full slate of it. A couple of good ones we had lined up. Still got maybe one or two good ones left in the SEC, but this week there are no top 25 teams that'll be matching up around the country at all. So, kind of a lax week this week.
Yeah, I'm finally here. Well, you're a minute and a half on your introduction.
Yeah. You know, gotta have it. You guys follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SECTalk 20. Want to throw that out there first before we get
podcast.
Yeah. Before we get things up and running here, for you guys. For you guys visually, I'm gonna throw up the schedule for this weekend as well as your top 25 on the screen. Other than that, Cody, just let's go ahead and jump into some news real quick. Obviously, we've got, like I just said a minute ago, a ton of corona cases that have canceled, postponed. We'll find out 4 out of the 7 SEC games from this weekend. You do have 3 remaining. If you guys are watching visually on YouTube, you'll see that on the right side of your screen. But Cody, go ahead and hit us with a little bit of other news, and we'll start to go through those games that have been canceled in just a minute.
Oh, yeah, throw me out there first.
Yeah, man.
We're going to knock the biggest news out of the park real quick, since it just happened actually on November 12th. The offensive line coach from Kentucky, we're going to screw this name up for sure. You can thank Google. John... I just lost it.
Schlauman.
Schlaumer. Something like that. Anyways, I know we're horrible with names. He actually died this past week of some type of colon cancer, I think it is. At the age of 45, after a 2-year battle, I think is what it said.
Yeah, that was it. Short. I mean, he was young. I think he was, 45 when he passed?
And I literally just said that.
Oh, sorry. Shows how much I was paying attention.
Yeah, that's normal. Anyways, we did want to say a quick shout out to him and his family and the Kentucky team as they are dealing with that loss. So the prayers and condolences to that family.
Most definitely. The last game that he was present for was the blowout win that Kentucky had over Tennessee, where he actually did, after the game, receive the game ball. Definitely sad news there out of Kentucky. We don't mean to make light of a situation. We try to keep this place cheerful and joyful as you can, but something like that is very devastating for not only the family, obviously his wife and children, and family around him, but as well as this football team, because you know good and well, playing football that becomes family as well, and that's tough, especially for a guy who just 2-3 weeks ago was on the sideline with the team. Or was in the locker room afterwards to receive the game ball, and who is a pivotal point on a team, So again, like you said, prayers and condolences to all the family, friends, coaches, players, everybody there at the University of Kentucky, as well as his family, obviously, back home. And one other one was earlier this week as well. Alex Trebek, actually, the Jeopardy host. Obviously, that's not necessarily SEC football related, but nonetheless, that was sad as well. Jeopardy is a game show also, and he's been battling a fight with pancreatic cancer, I believe. So that one, is a rough one, and unfortunately succumbed to that earlier this week. So prayers to him and his family. Obviously, that he was touched by many, as well as he's been on TV as long as I can remember, hosting Jeopardy and other sorts of things as well. So prayers out to
he's been on there since Jeopardy started, so I think he's probably the longest acting television host for TV show or game show.
Yeah, I did actually see he did break the record for that. I think just before him was Bob Barker,
Yeah.
and he actually took that. I don't know how long ago. I think it's been a little while back, but took that. But nonetheless, let's start to try to jump into some better but still not great news as we run through some of these games that have unfortunately been canceled around the SEC due to COVID-related concerns and things of that nature. Cody, you want to run through those, or do you have them in front of you?
Yeah, I got it right here.
All right.
Well, I guess in a way this is kind of good news for. We'll go ahead and knock out one team real quick. Is Georgia. With Missouri canceling the game against them, I'm pretty sure Georgia's kind of happy about that. Just get that extra week to get some players back that have been injured.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, it's probably a good thing definitely for the injury side. I know listening to some of the stuff that was going around and that Kirby was talking about in the press conference, they were pretty prepared for Missouri coming in as far as game plan. Don't know if they have picked their quarterback or what have you just yet, but game planning for Missouri, they felt fairly confident in being ready basically Wednesday on that. So I do know that he said that he wouldn't want to have to cancel this, maybe because he wants to keep momentum, even though he lost a lot, obviously losing to Florida. But maybe to gain some momentum afterwards and keep the end of the season alive. That game, the last I saw, that game has actually been postponed to the SEC Championship weekend, which is December 19th, unless by some miracle Georgia was to find a way into the SEC Championship, which would take Florida losing to two SEC East opponents. Very far-fetched for something like that to happen. So don't expect that to happen. But Missouri actually has a makeup game against Vanderbilt on the 12th, so they couldn't make it up on that day. It would have to be the day of the SEC Championship that the SEC has come out, and they have opened that as a date to be able to make up games that have been postponed, unless, obviously, you are to be set in that. Now, one of those that's going to be interesting is it looks like right now out of the West you got Alabama, and out of the East you got Florida. Well, Alabama is also one of those teams that's not going to be playing this weekend as LSU's numbers have risen. Well, LSU is supposed to play Florida on the 12th of December in a not a rematch, but that postponed game. Well, you can't.
First time with Florida having cases.
Yeah,
so.
more than likely you couldn't move that game to the SEC Championship game because Alabama should be playing that weekend. And I know you and I were talking about it a little bit earlier. I think if you're going to replay that game, you play the Alabama-LSU game because the two West opponents matter more than that crossover in the East. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the SEC does about that. I haven't seen anything come out on it just yet.
I know I saw talk about, they got some idea that they're tossing around what to do. And it may be looking at that, taking those crossover East and West teams and taking one of them out. The last team we played, the Alabama plays, that is from the East is next week against Kentucky. Now, what I could see them doing with, let me look at it real quick, with Alabama having that week open and Arkansas is supposed to play LSU. So I'm not sure how exactly they're going to do that. They may move the Arkansas-LSU game.
Yeah, there's a couple spots that could be changed around for sure.
So,
obviously, in due time, we'll see that come around. I'm like you, though. I definitely think that if you're going to cancel a game, that crossover game, even though it matters, especially you would want to see LSU-Florida play just to see what happens. But at the same time, at the end of that game, even if Florida lost to LSU, does it matter for playoff? Absolutely it matters for playoff implications, but it won't matter at all for an SEC championship game because that's a crossover game. In the East, as they're getting the wins they've got to have to be able to go to the SEC championship and represent the East. So if they lost to LSU, it's not going to matter as far as going to the SEC championship game. But if Florida's rematch against whoever they have on the 12th, which would have been LSU, but Alabama, them, obviously LSU's supposed to be making that one up. That matters more because if LSU was to beat Alabama, I don't think it's going to matter. I think Alabama's record obviously speaks for itself, and they would still represent the West, but no less. It's all a big cluster at this moment. It's a very strange week as these teams. Missouri is the team that came down with them, not Georgia. Texas A&M is the numbers that are rising, not Tennessee. Mississippi State is the numbers that are rising, not at Auburn. And then LSU.
Cases too now.
I don't think it was nearly to the extent of Mississippi State,
no,
though.
It wasn't as high, but they were still having cases there and coaches.
Yeah.
I did see that also. So that one right here, I think is a dual
kind of
type of area.
Yeah. And then you got LSU. The last I saw was LSU players were at a Halloween party, and it seems to be an outbreak there that the numbers have just skyrocketed. And then the other is, Arkansas's head coach Sam Pittman. He has actually tested positive, so he's not even going to be able to coach in that game against Florida unless he pulls a Nick Saban and can get some negative tests to roll across. We'll see how that one shakes out. So far, everything's looking good for that game to continue. And I'll run through that schedule that you do have remaining. You got Vandy and Kentucky playing at 12 o'clock on SEC Network. Arkansas playing number 6 Florida at 7 o'clock on ESPN. And South Carolina taking on Ole Miss at 7:30 on the SEC Network. So if you're good with it, Cody, why don't we go ahead and break down what it's looking like in that Vandy-Kentucky game, and we'll run through the others real quick.
Well, let me get my freaking computer to act. Son of, come on now. Come on, stupid.
Let me turn this volume down. I got a little high for you guys. I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, boy. If you ever deal with a stupid computer, you know what we're dealing with, people.
Yeah.
Earlier we had technical difficulties as usual.
Well, that was just that was clerical error there by user, not computer. I will stand up for computer on that one.
I said we need to fire the mic guy. He's slacking.
Well, if you fire the mic guy, things are going to change a good bit. Well, I'll at least give you a little bit of stats coming into this one. You got Vandy taking on Kentucky. Vandy's 0-5.
I'm trying to pull up, man. I'm trying to get it pulled up.
You're good. Vandy 0-5 coming into this one. Kentucky 2-4. Over under on this one's 42. The spread on it's 17. Kentucky's the favorite in this one, obviously, as Vandy's looking to get a single win on it. Your leaders coming into this one. Let's see. Rushing wise, Rodriguez Jr. leads at 413 yards. Henry Brooks leads it for Vanderbilt, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. Let's see. Terry Wilson leads it for Kentucky, 602 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Sounds like Cody just had an interception on his side. Coming into this one, Kentucky is a 93.7% favorite, as opposed to Vandy's 6.3, according to ESPN's Football Power Index. Not really expecting much out of this one as far as they're having a down year. Vandy is kind of in the same boat that they've been in for quite a while. No wins, looking to get a win. Could they squeak one out against Kentucky? I mean, anything can happen, but it's going to take a very large fight. We know last week they fought really well against a battered Mississippi State team that I did learn only had one. They were only one guy basically away from not being able to put a full roster as far as the 53-man roster on the field to be able to play against Vandy, which made it such a close game. So you can attribute to some of that there, but in this Vandy-Kentucky game, I think it's pretty much going to be all hands on deck.
Yeah, I mean, like you're talking about, Vandy, I think, coming this one kind of undermatched. I mean, you look at the team stats, Vandy's only averaging 12.4 points a game. Kentucky's averaging 20.8, where both teams are allowing, or Vandy's allowing 35, and Kentucky's only allowing 19.
Yeah.
But the difference is going to be that total yardage, too, now.
That's true.
Kentucky's only averaging 294 yards, where Vandy's averaging 333. So they're moving the ball around a good bit, passing it through the air quite a bit, but they just can't seem to get anything actually going for them. Mm-hmm. But at the other side of that, flip side of that coin, is they're allowing 440 yards. So if you're not, if you're allowing more yards than you can average, you're not going to have a good year. And hence, that's why you got Vanderbilt sitting 0-5 and Kentucky sitting 2-4. Now, I know we talked a little bit about, or you talked a little bit about the ESPN's FPI, and that thing I really don't. It's just going off of stats. It's just looking at the numbers. But on the flip side of that, I think too, you got to look at the teams. Kentucky's going to be at home, right? I think.
Yeah, it's in Kentucky. It's in Lexington.
Yeah, Kentucky's going to be at home. They'll have that little bit of advantage. I don't think Vanderbilt's going to stand much of a chance. They may get a couple scores, but I don't think it's going to be what we're all thinking it would be.
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement with you on this one. Obviously, we'll get to our picks once we run through these games here in just a short bit. Let's move on down to a little bit further south, down to Gainesville, where it's going to be warm this weekend, as they're pretty much wrapping up from a wet week as Ada came across earlier this week. You got Arkansas traveling down to them. Arkansas, like we said, without head coach Sam Pittman, which to me seems to be the heart of that team and motivator to keep them going. Obviously, Arkansas is looking a lot better than we anticipated them this year, 3-3, taking on 4-1. The Gators there, the over-under on that one is 60. 17.5 is the favorite there for Florida. Some of your leaders that you got going into this, Kyle Trask does lead it, 1,815 yards, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Coming off a big game against Georgia last week. Felipe Franks on the other side of the ball, the Florida native, at least played for Florida before transferring to Arkansas. He has just under 1,500 yards on the season, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the season as well. So it looks to be a pretty good quarterback matchup. I think I'm more interested to see how is Arkansas's defense going to look coming into this against a high-powered Florida offense. I know we've talked a little bit about it in the past, as far as it seems like the league in general around college football is starting to swing more to that powerhouse offense seems to be beating up on powerhouse defense, where it used to be defense wins championships. Well, now I don't think that defense can. I don't necessarily doubt the defense can win you a championship, because I do think you've got to hold the other team to less points, obviously. But I think these powerhouse offenses are what's making such a difference in these games, and obviously Florida is one of those so far this season. They've started to ramp it up and get better and better since that Texas A&M loss earlier in the season. So I don't know. I'm interested to see, can Arkansas's defense stand up and make a few big plays to make this one tighter?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a really good matchup here with the former Florida quarterback. What the heck's going on? Anyways, with the former Florida quarterback Felipe Franks taking on his team down there in Gainesville, I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of boos in that stadium come this Saturday. And I'm sure there are going to be some players on that Florida team who's going to take offense to him doing what he did about leaving. But besides that, when you look at the numbers here for the team stats, Florida's averaging 42 points a game, where Arkansas is only averaging 24. They're both allowing close to 28 points a game, but the flip side of that coin is the yardage. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think the difference stands. Arkansas is averaging 376 yards. Majority of that is through the air, but they're allowing 400 yards.
Yeah.
Whereas Florida's averaging 495 yards. Pretty much all that is through the air. Now, the flip side of that, they are allowing 402 yards. So their defense does struggle against that pass, and having Felipe Franks there at quarterback does give, I think, Arkansas a little bit more of an edge, just because he does know that defense. Mm-hmm. But being down in Gainesville, I'm sorry, I don't think the Hawks stand much of a chance.
Yeah.
I think the Gators are going to probably be a little bit too much for them.
Yeah, we'll definitely see, and again, we'll get to our picks here shortly. And like you say, a lot of it I think also boils down to, if you don't have that real heart of the team and who I believe is the head coach, Sam Pittman, just like if you didn't have Nick Saban in that game against Georgia, he brings the fire. He brings the fire that halftime. Obviously, Georgia was leading. Whatever he says and does at halftime always seems to make a difference there at Alabama. And I hate to make that comparison, but I think Sam Pittman's a lot of the same way. I think he can go in there and fire them guys up to where in the second half they could come out and make it a lot tougher game. We'll see how things are going to take off with that one. Well, let's go ahead and jump down 30 minutes later on the SEC Network at 7:30. Over in Oxford, you got South Carolina taking on Ole Miss. My biggest question in this one is if Ole Miss can put up a powerhouse offense in this one and run away with it, we'll see that line at 11 for Ole Miss. Over-under on it 70. Obviously, it's set pretty high for a reason there. I did notice that all home teams in this one are the favorites that are playing in the SEC, the lowest of which is that Ole Miss game. But I'm curious to see. I think if Ole Miss can handle this one pretty well, I know I've got a feeling that old Will Muschamp's seat's pretty hot up there in South Carolina. I think it gets a lot hotter if they fall in this one, but I think it gets even hotter than that if they fall big.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I think Will Muschamp's about on his last leg there. I mean, you look at their schedule. Their games after Ole Miss is Missouri, which should be a win. Then you have Georgia, depending on how well they are, or how well rested they are, and how many players they got back. And then you got Kentucky. South Carolina, I think Will Muschamp up there, I think his time's about coming due. He needs this win against Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, but with it being down in Oxford, Mississippi, I do not see Will Muschamp coming out of this one unscathed. You look at the numbers here, and South Carolina's only averaging 24.8 yards a game, allowing 33, averaging 340 yards, and giving up 423 yards. So they're giving up some big plays, but they're making some at the same time. But you look at Ole Miss, who's averaging 38 points a game, allowing 40 points a game, but they're averaging 541 yards. But they're getting, they're averaging 541 yards, but they're allowing also, their defense is struggling this year and giving up 533 of those yards too.
Yeah, that's the tough thing is when you're coming into these games and your defense isn't playing at all, it makes it really difficult. Take the Alabama game for example. Again, not trying to make this comparison, but that's just what I come back to. That offense is high power. They're putting up a lot of points. I mean, Matt Corral's thrown for almost 2,000 yards already this season. He's thrown 18 touchdowns, but he's made a lot of mistakes. He's thrown 9 interceptions. And Elijah Moore is his key receiver there, just under 1,000 yards himself, 829 yards, 6 touchdowns. Jerrion Ely has carried it 100 times, 524 yards, 6 touchdowns. But if your defense isn't able to stop people, you can score 100 points, but if you let the other team score 101, you lose. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day, unfortunately. But I don't think South Carolina's defense is going to be enough to slow Ole Miss down enough. But at the other side of that is they're not putting up a lot. Colin Hill's throwing for right at 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions. They're not moving the ball a lot. Their leading rushers Harris at 574 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's running the ball pretty well, which is what they're going to have to lean on against Ole Miss. But I still just don't know that they've got the firepower to really be able to hold on to them. Now, if they could come in and upset them, obviously we'd eat our words on that. But nonetheless, we got to see it first.
Yeah, I don't know. South Carolina to me has kind of been up and down this year. You look at their past few games. They had the struggle against LSU and give up 52. Struggle with A&M and give up 48. I think Ole Miss is going to be too high-powered because you look at the team they played against Auburn, who's having some quarterback issues there with Bo Nix. You see the inexperience back there that he has, but at the same time, it's like, well, he does make some big plays for us, which is good, but you look at, LSU, whenever they had the freshmen come in who exploded on South Carolina. A&M, Kellen Mond, let me go back to this game real quick. Kellen Mond averaged 224 yards passing, where Colin Hill only had 66 yards. That's going to be a really big difference to me, I think, in this game, is if Ole Miss's defense can show up and stand up and, get some pressure on Colin Hill, I think that's going to be the difference in that Ole Miss game. But likewise, I don't think South Carolina's going to have had the enough firepower or enough drive to beat Ole Miss down there in Oxford.
Yeah, both of them come into this one 2-4. Ole Miss is 3-3 against the spread on this one, and South Carolina 3-2-1 against the spread on it. So maybe they come in and they do upset the pickers and everything like that. A question that I do have for you: in a COVID season, speaking just SEC alone, because there's a few coaches I can think of outside of the SEC as well, but there's really only two that I can think of at the moment in the SEC that I think are on the hot seat, and one of which is that there at South Carolina and Will Muschamp, and then the other is Vandy's head coach. I mean, Vandy just hasn't been very relevant in football in the past few years, and it continues here. They're looking to go 0-10 this season in their play. I don't see them getting a win against anybody this season, which is unfortunate for them. But is it a season in this corona pandemic year that we're having? Is it a season that you can actually fire a head coach? Not only in the middle of the season, like if they were to lose this, could they get rid of Will Muschamp? You know, I think in a regular season you could. Granted, he hadn't had a lot of time there, but he's had enough years to maybe get some stuff going, and I think he's got a couple of recruiting classes starting to move in. But I mean, is it a year? Is it a year that you can fire a coach, given just the predicament and the strangeness of this 2020 season?
My thing with this is, and it's kind of, back and forth. I kind of go back and forth through the way on this topic. I believe you can, just based on the fact, this coronavirus year, had a short season, didn't have a lot of playing time, which is fine. But at the same time, look at, some of these other teams. Take LSU, for example. They lost their whole team, and it shows. But then you look at Florida, who's doing really good over there in the East. It's kind of hard to sit there and say yes and no, or yes or no, because I'll use Georgia for example. 2 years ago, Georgia's in a championship game, in a national championship game. I know. Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yep.
And then just a veteran coach makes a good call that most people wouldn't make, pulling out, your starting quarterback all year to put in a true freshman. I mean, and it catches teams off sides, and you don't see coaches making that adjustment. As far as being on the hot seat up there in South Carolina, I believe he's on the hot seat, but I think there's more determining factors to look at than just this year alone. Now, don't discount this year, no, by no means. But at the same time, I say keep these teams of this year, look at how these teams are played, and adjust the teams to that recommendation.
Yeah. I can kind of agree with what you're saying as far as you do have to look at the body in total, because like Vanderbilt, like I said, they haven't been very relevant in the past few years, and this year even less. And obviously you've got guys that are opting out, and that does make a difference on your team. Even though one guy shouldn't make a difference, if you get a few of those guys that do drop out that are key components to your team, it can make a really big difference. And it's hard for me to say. I think Vandy is one that you could go ahead and make the change. Why not? Let's go ahead and make the change and find another another way.
I do agree with Vandy, because I believe who's their head coach? Real quick.
Did you find it?
Yes, you look at Vanderbilt's head coach there, Derek Mason. He's been there for, his record's 27-50.
Good Lord.
He does not have a great record there at Vandy. But here's my flip side to this.
So he's been there, 6 years?
Coaching career. At Stanford, he's been there, 6 years.
He's been at Vandy since 2014.
replaced James Franklin. I forgot James Franklin was there first.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Before
Obviously,
he went to Penn State.
Yeah, and has had a couple of good seasons there at Penn State. Not looking so great for him to start off here, but yeah, I think that's when he's been there 6 years. You've had plenty of time to make a change, and the possibility of an 0-10 season even in this pandemic, you got to have something out of it. I mean, take Arkansas for example. They hadn't won an SEC game in I don't know how long. And they're turning around in 3-3 this season on a season that we still doubted for them to be any good. Look, he got a change in head coach. He changes up his offensive and defensive coordinators, gets another quarterback in there. A few changes that are made there, and look, they're sitting 3-3. They're shooting .500 right now. And Sam Pittman's first season at a team that had nothing in the past couple of years. So I think it's definitely a time for a change there. I think the only thing that saved Will Muschamp last year was the fact that he beat Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, well, you look at his head coaching career there at Vandy. His conference overall, he's 10-43.
10 wins in the SEC.
In his best year, he went 3-5 twice. Back in 16 and back in 18.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's time for a change up there from Derek Mason. I hate to say it, but I think it's time.
He's a good coach, I'll say that, but he's not a head coach to me. And I think it's time for Vanderbilt to kind of start looking to the looking glass and say, look, I think we need to bide our time here. I mean, we're paying him $2.7 million. I don't know how long his contract is, but at the same time, I'm like, I think it's time for them to find their replacement coach up there. Nothing against Derek Mason. He's a great coach, but he's not a head coach. And it shows. Yes, you're in Vanderbilt. Yes, you're in one of the toughest conferences in college football, but you're not making improvements on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you have these other teams who are constantly changing, and I'll use Alabama for example, is every year they will lose a coach. They'll lose an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams, strength and conditioning, quarterback. They'll lose a coach every year. They lost a coach.
I think this is the only year they didn't, right?
No, we lost.
I know Scott Cochran went to Georgia, but as far as like a key position player, though, I think y'all were good this year.
Well, he was a key position coach there too now.
Oh, well, I mean like offensive, defensive, wide receiver, running back, head assistant.
Positional coach, yes.
Yeah.
But as far as like important coaches, which I still consider strength and conditioning coaches important too.
Oh yeah.
There's always a change.
Yeah.
But the constant thing that stays with Alabama is the head coach. The experience Nick Saban brings to the table, to where if he loses his position, he can feel it. And sometimes, and I hate to say this, but sometimes he fills that position with a better coach. And I'll say that for our strength and conditioning this year, yeah, we've had a couple injuries that could have been avoided, but they're freak accidents.
Yep.
The tackle on I forgot his name. Anyways, tackle on a receiver.
Oh, Jalen Waddle?
No, not Jalen Waddle. Is it Waddle?
Well, he's your receiver that's out for the season.
I thought he went to pros.
Did you just say you thought Jalen Waddle went to the pros?
Yeah, I'm thinking of Jerry Jeudy.
Okay.
But like with that tackle with him, that's just a freak tackle.
Yeah.
You couldn't predict that.
Yeah.
So I think changing some coaches is an improvement. I think it's time for Vandy to kind of look at it, saying, I think it's time for us to make an improvement.
I can agree with that. Like I said, that was just kind of a quick little deal that I wanted to run through on kind of how you felt on some of the coaching hot seats. Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead to save a little bit of time here so we don't get too long with it. Let's go ahead and jump into our picks of the week that we've got pulled up here. I'm going to get up on the screen for you guys. And Cody, I'm going to start off with you like we do every week. I'll get your picks pulled up on the screen for everybody to be able to see. Boom, there we go. All right, you want to run through them? You got them in front of you?
Paper. I lost my paper.
All right, it's all good. I got them for you. So far this season, you're 16-6. You're looking good. Like I said last week, I'm going to do one less pick each week, so he can catch up with me. This will be the last week that I'm going to do 2 picks this week. He'll do 3, obviously going to the SEC, and I'm going to do one a little bit different. So hopefully we get a different outcome. I don't know. We'll see. Vandy, Kentucky. We're going to start it off right there. He's got Kentucky getting the win 31-24 by a touchdown there. Has that one being a lot closer than I think a lot of people think. The over-under on that one, let me get it pulled back up here on our other screen. I've got it
for that game
42,
is,
and the line on that one is Kentucky at 17. So he's got one a lot closer on that one. Moving on down to Arkansas, Florida, over-under on that one is 60. He does have it going over on that one. And Florida is a 17.5-point favorite. He likes that number. He's got Florida 56-17 over Arkansas. Huge game offensively there for Florida. Not so much for Arkansas's defense. We'll see how that one turns out. South Carolina and Ole Miss. This is the one I was surprised by. Ole Miss is an 11-point favorite coming in this one. The over-under on it is 70. And you've got it right now at 66 looking at the number. He's got Ole Miss 35, South Carolina 31. That's a tight one. That's a tight one. We'll see how it shakes out on it. Not 100% on it. I'll show you my picks real quick on the screen. I am 17-6 on the season. After this, like I said, we will at least be even up on the games that we are picking. Like I said, I wanted to do things a little bit different. So instead of picking a score for the Arkansas-Florida game, obviously if Florida wins, Cody gets the win. I'm going to pick Arkansas plus 17.5. I'm taking those points. I don't think Arkansas is going to get beat quite that bad. I think that defense is going to be a little bit better. And maybe give Florida a little bit of trouble, because what's going to happen in this game is Arkansas is going to be able to take and look at some of the schemes that Florida was able to run, not only in the Georgia game last week, but also throughout the season, and hopefully put that into action. Obviously, the biggest thing is going to be able to get on Kyle Pitts, and hopefully Felipe coming back to Florida for the first time will be able to make a difference there for Arkansas's offense. So I'm going to take Arkansas laying the points there, 17.5, to keep that a little bit closer. Obviously, if Florida wins the game, even if it's less than 17.5, Cody wins it. But if Florida was to win it by more than 17.5, I will lose that one. Moving on, I am taking Ole Miss over South Carolina 41-24. I think they're going to absolutely roll them, whereas Cody's got that one a little bit closer. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. I never did get a pick. Never did see a pick come through on MadDawg earlier. Unfortunately, I think he's a little down on himself in the season so far. Unfortunately, he is 4-6 through the season so far. That brings me to the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Cody, and that is right now, looking at the way the season's shaking out, it looks like we're going to see Alabama and Florida in the SEC championship game. That's what it looks like so far. We'll see, but if this was, obviously we predicted Alabama and Georgia in the season. Georgia has had a lot of injuries and was really beat up coming into Florida. They're even more beat up leaving Florida. Nonetheless, Florida got the job done against that Georgia defense. And right now it's looking like we're going to have Alabama-Florida in the SEC championship game at the end of the season. How do you feel about that one as opposed to what we were looking forward to as a rematch in Alabama and Georgia?
Yeah, after the Alabama-Georgia game, it kind of shocked me the way Georgia the trash just fell off the wagon, I guess you can say. The struggle against Kentucky, you had an off week, and then Florida just doing what Florida did to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the year plays out, especially with the way Florida's been playing. Their high-power offense, they like going to the top, but their defense is what I think is going to end up being their downfall. Whereas if you look at Alabama, they're a well-rounded team. Defense is getting better by week. Offense is improving by week, even with one of the best receivers I think you can say in the league this year with him being out. And I think you can agree to say that if it comes out between Alabama and Florida, yeah, you do have two high-power offenses going at it, but the difference is going to be defense in this game. And I think that's where it comes back down to the roots of Alabama and Nick Saban, where defense wins championships. And I think you'll see that against Florida.
Yeah, we'll see. I think if you looked at it today, I would be really excited to see this game, just because of the two high-powered offenses. Whereas opposed to if it was Georgia in this position and they were to play this weekend, I think Alabama would absolutely roll them. So I'm fairly excited in this point as far as seeing this game, and we'll see. Me personally, the difference in it is Florida can put up a lot of points. Georgia's defense last week had a lot of chances to come back, and they missed those opportunities. Whereas Alabama is not going to miss those opportunities; they're gonna catch them. But I think this is going to be a lot like the Ole Miss Alabama game earlier in the season. I think Alabama's defense has improved, so has Florida's. But it's just those offenses, man. I think it's going to be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to who's got the ball left at the end of it. It's going to be a lot like that Clemson Notre Dame game last weekend that we saw, double overtime thriller. I'm excited to see how it shakes out. Obviously, we still got more ball to play, but it's still fun to look ahead to kind of see what it looks like we're coming into on that one. At the end of the day, it may very well come down to, just like you said, Nick Saban saying defense matters, and we will see. I'm going to jump through a couple of these big games that we got coming up this weekend. One that I saw just a minute ago that kind of surprised me, and that's number 9 Miami is traveling to Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech is a favorite as a non-ranked team. They are a 2-point favorite coming into that one. I guess it's because they're at the house. A couple other games to watch out for. Coastal Carolina and Troy. Coastal Carolina is 15th. They are 7-0, and if they are to beat Troy, it is at Troy. Coastal Carolina is 11-point favorite, but if they are to beat Troy, they will be the first time, and it will be the first time that an a Sun Belt team has gone 8-0, starting off a season. So, kind of exciting there for Coastal Carolina. A couple of other ones that I wanted to say: Notre Dame, number 2 Notre Dame and Boston College facing off on ABC at 3:30. Notre Dame a 13.5-point favorite. They are traveling to Boston College off of a huge win, obviously, against Clemson last weekend. Keep an eye on that one. Boston College can sometimes throw a wrench in things. A couple of your other big ones that were canceled is obviously the Ohio State-Maryland game. But one other one that I wanted to say watch out for, and that is Wisconsin and Michigan. Wisconsin's been off the field a couple of weeks because of coronavirus. They do have to travel to Michigan. Michigan not looking that great this season, 1-2. That could be another one in Jim Harbaugh that has a little bit of a hot seat going on. Wisconsin only a 4.5-point favorite in this one. So those are a couple of the key ones that I was looking at. Cody, you got any other big ones that you wanted to catch us up on real quick?
Yeah, one I want to shout out real quick, just because of with it being Veterans Day this past Wednesday, is a shout out to Army taking on Tulane. Tulane is the favorite in this game by 4.5. Over and under on that game is 47.5. Army is 6-1 on the year. Tulane's 4-4. So looks like Army's gonna get a little bit of a test this weekend, and we'll see just what the Golden Knights can do. So that's one to kind of keep your eye out on. That one is being played on ESPN Plus. And of course, I gotta shout out my.
There we go. There we go.
Number 25, Louisiana Raging Cajuns are playing this weekend. Also, they're taking on USA or South Alabama at home. Raging Cajuns this year are ranked 25th. They're one of those teams that keep getting bumped in and out of the top 25. They are 6-1 on the year also. So that's another team to kind of keep your watch out for. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, you got a couple of these Big 12 teams that are finally getting to play. Arizona starting their year off playing number 20 USC. That one could be interesting to watch at the same time. And I really think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that was the bulk of the ones that I was looking at. So.
Number 19, SMU taking on Tulsa is another one to kind of keep your eye out for. Tulsa is a favorite in this game by 2.5 points. So, kind of, they're predicting this one to be close, but I think the Mustangs are going to pull this one out. They are 7-1 on the year, so.
It's a strange week. It's just a strange week. No top 25 matchups for the first time this season, outside of probably when, just the Pac-12 or Big Ten or whoever it was. Or excuse me, Big Ten or ACC, whoever it was that started the season was playing by themselves. That may have been the first time that there were weeks without top 25 matchup. But this week is another one where everybody's in, but no top 25 players. Our teams are playing each other. So a little bit different, but nonetheless, that's what it is. Let's go ahead and jump into our normal stuff, which is follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SECTalk20. If you guys haven't already, we would truly appreciate it. Obviously, like we say every time, our support page is also open. It'll be in the link at the bottom of the description of this episode. If you're listening on podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, same thing. Just look in the description, click the arrow below, and you will find that not only our Linktree app that you can get our link, it'll take you to our Twitter page, it'll take you to our Facebook page, a couple of different podcast link, YouTube page, everything. But under it is the support link. Click it, and if you guys want to support us, that would be awesome. I already said Facebook and Twitter, so I'll pop that back up for you guys. Cody, you got any closing remarks before we jump out of here, big guy?
I think pretty much covered. I mean, like always, guys, just follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SECTalk20. If you have any questions...
I had one other thing. Like, you just said it, and it made me think of it. Sorry, I forgot about it. But, dude, like you were saying, and you were in the process of doing it a minute ago with the Army deal, shout out to all veterans out there. Veterans Day was this weekend. We really appreciate you guys' service for our country. It definitely takes a brave soul to be able to go out there and put your life on the line for our country. So we really appreciate and salute to all of you veterans out there as well.
Yes. Yeah, I think we kind of slacked on our social pages past week with that.
Yeah. It's tough keeping up with all the stuff we got to keep up with.
We saw it, guys. Don't hurt us that much for it. But like always, guys, just follow us on Facebook and Twitter at SECTalk20. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can message us on there, or you can email us at SECTalk20@gmail.com. And besides that, man, I think this is another show in the books.
Yeah, sounds good. You guys will check in on you after the games this weekend. And that's going to wrap us up. This is your host, Holden and Cody. And we're out.